Hello, world community. I am very glad to interview today in this series with the experts and relevant people in ISO TC307, the International Standard Organization. Today we have Caroline Thomas, our convener in the Working Group 6 for use cases, and Fiona Delaney, one of the key experts as well in the Working Group 6 and representing the national body for Ireland. Welcome. It's very nice to meet you, my dear colleagues, and really, I hope we can enjoy this short interview about the job you are very well executing in ISO TC307. Well, I have one first question, which is just to give the context to our community. What is the main objective of the Working Group 6 within ISO TC307? Let's say, Caroline.
Thank you, Ismail. Yes, as you mentioned, Fiona and I are working with ISO TC307, which is the blockchain and DLT standards group or committee. Within WG6, it's the use cases, and really the role of what we're working on is when you have new technologies such as blockchain and DLT and all the emerging ways that is developing into tokenization and other examples, how do you help people understand the use of the technology itself, and then also which markets you can apply that on? So within WG6, we've been going since 2017 and publishing reports since 2022 on a whole series of use cases that are looking at different markets, which could be financial markets or agriculture. Supply chains is a big one always for blockchain and DLT. Things like the metaverse that you're well aware of as well. We're crossing a whole range of subjects so that the objective is that for people who are reading these reports, whether you're a business person, a technologist, a lawyer, an innovator, and we talk to lots of SMEs as well as large companies to help understand what programs they're doing in all these different markets. And then we start to, whether we're talking to Spain or India or China or many of the European countries as well, we're bringing them all together to say, how are you doing it in your market? What's different in your market compared to another market? So the whole purpose and objective really is to explain the potential and the actual use cases that are out there using blockchain and DLT. And then every year we're looking at the latest trends to bring them on board as well. So it's always a busy time and always curious, but we're helping to explain what's going on in these technologies and the value that we bring.
Thank you. Oh. Feel free if you want to present and spread the efforts during the interview. Let's go for you, Fiona, because you were managing and driving all of us with the projects in the Working Group 6. And I would like to explain our audience how can blockchain use cases be harmonized with other technologies such as artificial intelligence, IoT, and what are the challenges and benefits from what we have learned in this integration with blockchain.
Thank you very much, Ismail. Thanks, LACNet, for the opportunity to chat with you. That's kind of a really big question, you know. For me, my background is software engineering. I joined ISO TC307 in about 2018. So as Caroline mentioned, the use cases working group probably started a year before that, or maybe 18 months before that. And so when I joined, it was very young and quite fresh. Many of the people, while there's a lot of technical people there, there's also a lot of business people, a lot of academic participation, and I would also say policy people. So there'd be a lot of people maybe coming from consultancies with some kind of technical background, but maybe with a more business focus. So if you remember back 2017, 2018, the trust machine, blockchain is going to change the world, all that kind of stuff. And people, innovators everywhere, were applying blockchain to sort of everything. And the use cases working group for me at that time seemed this unique opportunity to get involved, to know who else was there, because we could share a little bit of our experience from, our slice of the pizza. So the things that I was working on, I think Caroline mentioned agriculture. Obviously, I'm coming from Ireland. Agriculture is a huge, big part of our GDP. It was very exploratory at that time, how blockchains might support transparency in the food industry. And I think we've really seen, particularly in Latin America, amazing accelerations and applications for blockchain supporting international trade and export of things like beef, maybe wine, different things like that. The European project obviously has looked at the European blockchain service infrastructure. That was a think first, maybe act later kind of project. Maybe that's a contentious thing to say, Ishmael, I don't know. But we can see where, how regions are maybe moving together. And Caroline and myself worked on and it's already published in 2022, the first use cases collection, which has 22 globally sourced use cases, which were, had been put into production. So from energy to agri-food to all kinds of fintech applications coming from different places in the world, and seeing just how the benefits of this type of technology, which is a decentralized, maybe disintermediating, facilitating infrastructure, it's a governance facilitating infrastructure, how that was being deployed to resolve business problems in a digitalizing society. So I think that we've really come to understand over time how varied the approaches have been, and also maybe pointing towards where, well, the thing I love about it is that we get to explore where we're going next. So to mention AI or quantum or digital twins, robotics, any of the kind of convergence technologies that we might be exposed to, and that we think the future is going to be made of, and we can use the methodology that we have described in and developed in WG6 together with our colleagues from right across the world as a way of drafting, considering, explaining both to ourselves in WG6, but also in our teams. Our teams are multidisciplinary. We have business teams, we've got the technology team, we've got customer facing or partner facing counterparties, where we need to elaborate what the infrastructure we're going to be using will look like. So in Europe, we know we have things like DORA, which is a cybersecurity regulation that must be contended with now, whereas previously probably GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Act. It was things like privacy and identity that would have been maybe more of concern because that was legal. So I think we see the use case method, or what we're doing with the use case collections, is kind of at this intersection or cross section between business, maybe public administration, legal, technical, and business type interoperabilities. I hope that's not too long. But obviously I'm super excited by it. So having been involved in this work, collaborating with so many people right across the world, and everybody is really interested in blockchain as an emerging technology. So the community in ISO TC307 is worthwhile in itself. And I would say in immersing yourself in it and getting to know people and getting to see what they're doing, as well as developing your own projects and understanding how you might share that in a formal standards making way. It's a very interesting process.
And which countries and regions are you watching that are currently most active, Fiona?
You know, it changes, and it really depends on who's involved. So I would say in the beginning, there was a lot of US participation, a lot of European participation. And then contributions is a kind of a different thing as well, like who steps up and who, you know, actually writes a use case. And in that sense, we see, and that could be from anywhere in the world, from China, Korea, Singapore, I think
India,
the Netherlands,
Spain,
of course, Ireland, UK. I mean, really, in so many different places. We don't actually have any from Latin America at the moment. And that to me is a big lack, because particularly from my perspective in the agri-food sector, we see massive strides there and really, really amazing like cross-border interoperability and really successful projects there. So I'm very excited to have this opportunity to kind of reach out to the community through LACNet and that more global community and see just what the possibilities are there, you know.
Yes, I think I'd add to that, because, you know, when we're looking at all the different areas that LACNet's involved in, one of those is certification of students or products or goods. And again, we've got use cases that we've done previously with Singapore and Europe that are doing educational certification, which is, again, immutable on the blockchain and being used in huge regions, and that's happening in India and China as well. So I think there's a lovely crossover when you're looking at the use cases that we've published so far and understanding what you're doing in your regions, and see if there's inspiration one way or another. You know, people are using different blockchains, or they're using different algorithms to work out how you're going to do trust in the first place. And similarly, there's a lot of medical cases where people are looking at, if you're providing pharmaceuticals in the supply chain, China had a very sophisticated way of spotting counterfeit products in a supply chain, whereas India was doing it on a huge international and regional scale. And how do you make sure that if you have many regions in an area that you're covering, like with LACNet, how do you make sure that those supply chains are secure, and what position is blockchain playing in that? So, you know, ultimately, the world over, there's a lot of similar problems that countries and regions and people have, and if we're able to share some of that information, we're helping. The use cases are helping everybody from lawyers to startups to understand what the potential is, and then have a standard behind it to allow them to, if you're adopting that standard, you build on top of it rather than recreating everything from the start. And then also, I would say in finance as well, when I'm looking at the LACNet region, there's everything from big banking finance to inclusive microcredit, agricultural areas as well. And we've covered those topics as well, but we want to keep building on them. And there's almost so much innovation coming through with tokenization and other areas now. We almost feel like we're just starting another big chapter.
Okay. And what about the financial sector? Because you are also the liaison with the technical committee in financial services and TC307. And how do you see the financial sector and the initiative for the common vocabulary for CBDC and central banks? Spread a little bit for the financial sector, these interoperability challenges, how we are going to achieve it in these jointly efforts.
Okay, have you got 2 hours for this? I think, again, in my background, I've worked for the large banking organizations and credit card companies and inclusive finance as well. So I see all these different models, whether it's releasing trade finance or creating faster settlement in the big banks. So we're involved in all of those areas. But now I think for many financial institutions, they're trying to work out how far they can go down the CBDC if you're a central bank line. And we're certainly looking at that within TC68. One of the big steps forward, I think, in the past year has been, we are in ISO TC307, which is a blockchain and DLT standards committee. But we work and have liaison with TC68, who are financial services, a big topic worldwide. We've set up a joint working group between the two committees, which is more than being a liaison, which is a sort of informal way and a formal way of discussing things, to actually having a joint team that we're all working together on. So you're bringing the digital and the financial expertise all together. That's looking at digital currencies. We're already on our second draft of what we want to do on having a common terms, a vocabulary of how do people use the words of digital currency. I remember in my background when I first worked at one of the big major banks in, what year was that, 2011, you weren't allowed to use the word blockchain in the bank because they thought it was Bitcoin. And obviously banks at that stage could not talk about Bitcoin. Fast forward to right now, and you have a huge amount of interest from countries we never expected to be interested in the digital currency or the tokenization piece. And as we're seeing in the US right now, that's, a huge flip in regulations as well as ambitious intent. So we're certainly looking at that very closely, but then looking at the rest of the world as well, because the whole financial markets are in a TC68 is saying this is the most dynamic time they've ever seen in finance. And that's a public quote. I wouldn't be saying it otherwise. So we are really gearing up on the tokenization, on the digital currencies. There's a lot of talk between the technical committees on the whole area of DeFi and what, how can we work together for it now? Because now blockchain is finance and finance is turning into digital currencies. So the pace of change is huge. And that's particularly when we're looking at other regions such as yours to say, okay, what are the initiatives that are coming through there? And where are the stakeholders that are coming, whether it's banks or tokenization companies or digital currency companies and businesses. It's probably the most exciting and dynamic time as we are writing the standards. The progress keeps changing at an exponential rate.
100%. If you don't mind me just adding something in there.
Go for it, Fiona.
It's such an amazing time. I think the dream of blockchain really was like the democratization of many things, of co-designing or co-creating or co-governing the future of which is a hybrid digital society. And I think DeFi and the amazing amount and vibrancy of so many of the like DeFi projects or crypto projects in let's say a community like Solana, young startups or young project builders solving problems for crypto savers with crypto staking and how to, spend your yield without cashing in your coins, how to practically solve. They're almost like uniquely crypto problems, but these are in a very small way democratizing solving problems that they're universal banking and finance problems. It's the consumer first, and it's a huge democratization. I know, shout out to the super teams. There's a big demo week in Europe in Budapest at the moment and continuing into next week, where I honestly think the next unicorns in finance, not just in crypto, in finance, will come out of something like that. It's a demo day for builders. I'm not trying to shill Solana over anything else. I'm just saying that that protocol is putting so much emphasis in training up, supporting, being dynamic, to nurture talent, to spotlight it, and to test the resilience of new ideas and new concepts. And I can see an organization like LACNet being that same thing. You know, it's a different kind of a community or a different kind of a context, but it's about nurturing talent. It's about bringing forward and raising awareness. It's about engaging at so many different levels internationally, whether it's at standards level or, you know, industry level or regional level or and there's absolutely nothing wrong with developing things that are hyper local. I know there's a young guy in Dublin. He's from Palestine, actually, and he's doing his cybersecurity degree in Limerick. And he's made an AI chatbot, which he's showcasing at our demo day next week, which is a multi-chain demo day. And you can use Google Maps, but he's made an AI chatbot that helps him personalize his journeys around Ireland. So it's as if Google Maps isn't enough. He's got his own little, hey, do you feel like going to see, you know, whatever? And it's the cutest, coolest little thing. I mean, it's just, and stuff like that is it's unique to him, but it's highly transferable. And that's what I love seeing. That's the things that I get to see in the use cases working group can be hyper local and small, but super cool and very generalizable. And for anybody getting into the standards world, that is what I would say is like, stay curious. You are going to learn whatever your thing is, whatever you love, you're going to find loads of it, just loads and more. And there's no end to the amount of knowledge. And I always say that people in standards are nerds. I'm a nerd myself. I love nerds. Nerds are great people, welcoming, interesting. Can get a little bit stuck and hung up on things sometimes, but that's okay. You know, they're just passionate, right? And so if you're that kind of person, I would definitely say, come and give it a go. Be nerdy with the rest of us, you know?
I think the important thing, you've hit on a key point there, Fiona, because I think with standards, we've all seen the ISO logo and you're going, okay, that's a standard and that's very formal and it needs to be formal and respected. But anybody could be involved in writing a standard. And that's so important, the access to get into standards and put your expertise in, whether you are a super nerd or a lawyer or whatever you are.
Lawyers are super nerds too.
Exactly. But I mean, ultimately standards are mapping the world of the future and trying to put a safe framework, if you like, a reliable framework that people can build on. And there aren't that many times in your life that you can contribute something that's much bigger than your own company or your own region. You're actually influencing the whole world. So that, and when technologies like this are coming in at such a speed now, the chance to be at the table, having those discussions and bringing your experience or your intuition sometimes, it's a game changer, and standards need that. They don't want to be complacent. They really want to move forward quite quickly and allow the market and the technologists to actually build faster and more reliably, and really gain traction in what they're doing. I must admit, when I was first involved in standards, I didn't think it was going to be this exciting, challenging, and truly interesting, very dynamic.
Good. Thank you for spreading in that area. Both of you are really nice. Fiona, what about this data flow model 6277? What are the key advices you could give to those that are designing blockchain use cases to ensure these techniques for interoperability, for data protection, and so on to align over there? How do you see the lessons to give to those that are designing new blockchain use cases?
That's a really, really good question. And there's a long answer and there's a short answer. So I'm going to give you the short
Feel
answer.
free. No, feel free. Feel free.
When we were working, so when I say we, I don't just mean me and Caroline. There was about 60 people who, in various different ways, were participating in WG6 from all over the world, who contributed to the first use cases document, which was another ISO lows numbers. That was called TR3242. And that was a collection of blockchain and DLT use cases. And I guess the innovation that we brought to it was this consideration of what had recently been published from TC307 was the reference architecture, which was a system view architecture where you could envisage your system almost like an exploded view of a node on the system. So you abstract your view of the blockchain and all of the stakeholder categories that would connect or engage with your system in this single view. Not of components, but in this abstracted view of off-chain interfaces. Off-chain interfaces, we in blockchain systems, we call them kind of proprietary data, maybe an on-prem system. It could be something like an Oracle system. So in agriculture, that might be weather reports. In a metaverse traveler system, that might be publication dates on YouTube or something like that, right? It could be something external, which is giving you a data feed. So there's an abstracted view of off-chain systems. There could be two blockchains interoperating with each other. So the kinds of systems that we saw back then where you might have like Hyperledger Indy for the decentralized identities, and then you might have Hyperledger Besu, where you might have, let's say, a private instance, like a consortium type blockchain for key stakeholders, and then you're publishing something to a public blockchain like the Ethereum network through the Besu client. And that would have been, again, if we pick the, I think it was the Sicilian blood oranges, the red oranges
Yes.
from Italy. They
Yeah.
used a system something like that, where they were publishing for the consumer view-only data about transparency and their geographic indicator, which is a very important value add for their crop and their product. But they also had an inner working, let's say, consortium blockchain engine, which was around compliance with their standard, which allowed for that certification or that compliance with that geographic indication standard. So you can, in a single system, you can have multi-chain experiences, and then you would be, in that sense, you would need to map which are the bits we're putting on the public blockchain and why. It's a little more expensive, maybe. We've got, back then you had gas fees and everything else. And then if you've got your own consortium blockchain, who are those members? Are they running nodes? What infrastructure requirements and needs does that imply for them? And then if you've got another operator creating your decentralized and secure and private identities, which is the actor or stakeholder that has that capability and who has the right to validate or check. So the TR, Ishmael, that you asked about was a deeper dive into this concept of what data, why, and who can access data that's on chain. And so when you're considering and building your system, you would think very carefully about what data will be on chain, because that can be expensive, or is that valuable, or is that really public? You know, there's many different reasons why you might. There's a few different reasons why you might use a blockchain. There's not endless amounts, but and that way you can map in a single view, more or less, in this abstracted view, which is an exploded view of your blockchain connected system. You can very simply, in a very simple way, almost like a use case diagram, you can encapsulate this abstract view and abstract purpose of what data, where, and which stakeholders or which actors will be able to access through which interfaces. So you might have wallets, you might have dashboards, you might have command line interfaces, you know, all the the usual stuff.
I'd say with 6277, you know, the essence of that was in our first publication, which was 22 different use cases. First of all, we start off with a template and a methodology that allows you the customer view, and as Fiona was saying, that deep system view, and whether it's a system view or an architecture view, the different characters and actors that are involved in there, and some other diagrams as well. But every use case is working on a consistent template, so you can compare against the different use cases to see why the financial one is working in this way and why the supply chain one is working that way. And to your point, Fiona, with 6277, the essence of that was that looking at the edge and the on-off chain experience of blockchain. So it's not just one technology and you're looking inside the box, you're looking at those edge pieces of how it connects. And I think that's brought a value again to a lot of people who are trying to say, okay, so from a governance point of view, who's responsible for that data as you're going through that process? Or if you are an end customer, how can you be sure that the information that's coming out of a blockchain is immutable and is trusted? So I think by having a consistent use case structure that we go through, it's very readable. And then when you want to start making comparisons with your own experiments that you might be doing or projects, you can map that into the template structure and look at existing ones to help guide you on the questions that you might want to use for standards, or even if you're trying to make a business case out of it to investors or partners or whatever. So the use case template, which we're now publishing hopefully this year as a white paper, is something that everybody can get access to from TC307. So again, I think we're all interested in inclusion and sharing information. We certainly charge for most of the big technical reports because there's a value item there. But we're also looking at ways of how can we communicate very quickly to allow people to have access to some of these resources and then get involved in standards, or then get involved in their own business to improve what their business and applications of blockchain and DLT are.
Okay, no, very, very good, because it's a document that created precedent in TC307. Really, you did a very great job. I enjoy during the process right away. And
Ishmael, I can't hear you. Yeah. One thing I would add, Caroline, just in the gap, I was just going to add one thing. The one thing that was really interesting for me, the difference between 3242 and then 6277. So 3242 was the first one and has 22 different use cases all over the world, very robust. We tested the methodology really quite fiercely, say, during the development of
intensively,
that document and that model. And then for 6277, that was the short answer I was seeking earlier on, was the deeper dive into just how we would model that on-chain and off-chain piece. And so there's only 3 use cases described in there. One of them is around e-commerce platforms and how you use blockchain as a core infrastructure there. And that use case came from China. We also, which is like the home of e-commerce, essentially. Then we have fish farm insurance. So that is about traceability and transparency in the fish farming industry, compliance, insurance. This again is from China, and they use insurance and access to insurance as a driver towards standards and compliance, which is different to how we do it in Europe, right? So that's a really interesting context.
And that plays into a real big sustainability sector as well, globally. Yeah.
100%. And then the third one was Ishmael's actually authored use case, which was the metaverse traveler. And that was a concept that certainly resonates with so many people coming out of COVID, where we wished we could have gone, but this is how I looked at it anyway. We wished we could have go on holidays. And this was this unique way of commissioning content from various different places and experiencing a mini holiday or a mini trip through really, really virtual means, but not constructed like a game environment, actually leveraging human endeavor and commissioning a sort of metaverse traveler at the other end who would create the content for you. Super lovely idea, very human. Lovely hospitality aspect to that as well. And then, of course, the blockchain is creating the reconciliations, maybe escrowing, that kind of thing. Really, really kind of contemporary and very, very digital experience. And the robustness of this view, this is what is important to have on-chain versus off-chain, what is how we might map these very, very different enterprise systems. And this viewing mechanism of the methodology, withstood the complexities of those and simplified it. So, I mean, ultimately, when we're talking about standards, I would love if these tools and these methods became sort of as ubiquitous almost as UML in the world of blockchain developments, something, just a tool that is ubiquitous, that is universally understood, that helps builders, entrepreneurs, business people spin up their ideas and de-risk them, technically de-risk them, as they are just conceptualizing it. So for me, in my world, as a blockchain person designing systems like on the back of the napkin, I completely use these kind of tools in my mind to go, oh, that will be there, that will be there, that will be there. It's quite liberating, to be honest. So you were talking about Ishmael 6277 and how that was groundbreaking for us, which it really was an extra piece of research. I would say this deeper dive. And my colleague, Dr. Xiaodan Tang, who's from the standards building world in China, that is her domain expertise, is around data flow and data governance, data flows. And she gets as excited about it as fluid engineers get about water. She gets like that about data and how it moves through systems. And so it's really amazing to work with people who are just top of their game in that world, and then to help co-design tools that make your life easier in this way. It's a very empowering process, really.
What about yours, Caroline? What advice you can give to our community to leverage this work in TC307?
Get involved. Just get involved. I think certainly we can share certain information on what's been published, so you can see what's actually out there. But it's so fascinating for us to make sure that we understand the differences between different regions. Within LACNet, you have a lot of different regions, cultures, countries, and the whole ethos behind LACNet is different from what we see in many other parts of the world as well. So even as a whole, we're very interested in understanding how the LACNet community works and how it's growing. and how it's innovating in ways that are different from other areas of the world. But similarly, because we have created so many use case examples now, they are there really to sort of pick and apply if people are trying to get into certain sectors, and see what's there already and build on top of it rather than trying to start everything from scratch. I think also the speed of how new businesses are beginning to grow now, because these technologies are well known, first of all, and secondly, with AI, the speed of and the noise around AI. If you're in the AI space, you actually need some different technologies behind you before you can start pulling all that information. At the moment, we're working on things like carbon markets and carbon credits in various parts of Europe and Asia, and the whole area of using a blockchain capability matched with an AI interpretation through that whole sustainability piece, which ultimately releases finance for better sustainability in different regions. You're really in that sort of circular economy space where you start off with one component is a blockchain standard. Then there's an AI level on top and other technology levels there. But ultimately, it's creating into a sustainable circular economy. So it's much bigger than the technology itself. And I think, again, for the LACNet, having a community of that size and the amount of different projects that you're working on are really fascinating to us. So we'd love to be able to work with you to understand where you think you are the most fascinating areas to work in, and where we can share some of that information that we have as well to help inform or communicate what else is out there.
Can I add something there? And this comes from a conversation that we had when we were preparing for this, Ishmael. We were speaking to Blanca and to Daniel, I think. And I think it was Blanca who said just how important narratives are. And in the world of technology, use cases are kind of like narratives. They're like a system snapshot. And you can take a collection, even from the three of us, right? If we suggested, the top 5 use cases that we'd ever heard of in 2018 to now to 2025, right? I mean, admittedly, crypto years are like dog years. So in fact, we're all like 100 years. But like if we kept that little snapshot record for ourselves of 5 use cases per year, like the best things you'd seen or the good things or the things that you'd never thought about, the pace of change is phenomenal. And when you collaborate in this way together, you're creating a kind of narrative. And I think for LACNet, that is actually something that's powerful. You have a common interest amongst your communities. I don't mean just one use case. I mean like common areas that are, sometimes it can be like for planetary good, like the carbon capture thing. Sometimes it can be about great little chatbots to make your granny's bus journey better. Or, do you know what I mean? It can be kind of anything, but that really is an expression of your culture. Like if you're solving problems in your culture, and that is the thing that makes it like a beautiful narrative of the problems that builders, like people like us, are trying to see solved. And for me, that little archive, that little running, it's not just a narrative anymore. It's like a little bookshelf or a little library or something like that. And every story is important, every story. And it's not about being big or small or funded or not funded. It's about the problems that we are trying to solve for our society. And our society is just increasingly global, increasingly digital, increasingly global. And the small things matter, small things that reflect where we're from, our society's culture. But that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah. I'd add to that with all these technologies that are there now, and for the narratives, it really is a mixture of if you're sharing something unique, how quickly, the access to be able to share it worldwide like that. We couldn't do that 30 years ago. Yeah. So that, those incremental things that make people different can be shared and communicated with everybody very, very quickly, access that way. But then also, if we want to get a more inclusive way of communities, then the standards are giving back at the same time. So the dynamics have changed so much since 10 years ago or 20 years ago, where now we can just click in to get information if we need it. And if we really want to share it and we have a compelling story to tell, then we can open the doors for that.
Well,
more LACNet. That's what we want.
Yes,
More LACNet.
Absolutely.
Yes. I believe it's perfect. It's the first interview of a lot I will do to you, and I really, within LACNet, we are slowly getting the rhythm to work in ISO TC307. So I think it is okay, this touch base with the use cases. Yeah. And well, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Lovely interview, and I think good content and very good ideas and lessons that we learned. These kind of things that really appreciate this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ismail. And also, I would say if people are within LACNet who want to get involved in standards, WG6 is a good window to start with, because you're hearing about the standards that are going on throughout the committee in the first place. But you also have a chance to really contribute. It could be a sentence, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be a whole pilot. But it's a very opening start to get your feet under the table with standards.